welcome to the webinar, guys. This is a monthly challenge webinar where every single month, together with Federico, we're hosting these webinars regarding the actual challenge or the current challenge that's active for the FP20 analytics. This month is regarding the e-commerce. So the reason for these webinars, or the main idea about them, is to, first of all, talk a little bit about the data set, which sort of things you should take into consideration, what sort of tricks you might apply here. You don't necessarily have to use everything. This is just a way on how we can present certain ideas that we also have here. If you have any additional ideas on how to make the data set better, remember, you can always use them. For example, in the data set, you don't have, for example, a sales target, right? You can easily create a new column, which is going to be your sales target. You can go ahead and do that. You're more than welcome to enhance the data sets to make a better story. The questions, for example, also in the challenge brief, I think we have like 10 questions, right? Yeah, 10 questions. You don't necessarily have to answer every single one of them. No, those are just some ideas on what you might focus on when creating the report if you don't know where to start. If you have a different approach that you want to kind of go and analyze there, you can go ahead and use that, right? Like I said, this is a playground where you can play around with the data set. Be free to use any of the previous resources from the challenges. You can look at the other reports, see, for example, how different styling options have been utilized, like page navigations, guided tours, filtering panels, different other things. Just take a look at, don't necessarily copy paste it. That's not a really good practice and you're not learning a lot that way, but take it basically as a source of inspiration. Think about how you might apply this to your own reports. How can you make it to look like your own more? So that is completely as an option for you. You have all the available resources. You have all the previous recordings. If you wanted to go through everything, probably 1 week is not enough. I would say probably 2-3 weeks to go through everything. But you have a lot of resources that you can utilize. Not speaking about even YouTube and everything else, right? There's just too much information there. But yeah, regarding the webinar itself, so we're going to go a little bit and talk about the data set. There are two main topics that Federico really wants to discuss with you guys and talk about, because we want to emphasize on the importance of these two things as well. So that's going to be things regarding filtering and also the color palettes and color choices. We're going to talk about some applications of ZoomCharts visuals. So what visuals I consider, for example, to be a good fit for this particular data set. And of course, we don't want to forget about that if you stick to the end and you fill in the feedback form, you also have a chance of winning the giveaway of a book from Pact. And I think we have 10 options for the books, right? So you can choose. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that we're giving out to you, not just resources, books, and other materials. So go ahead and utilize that option. And of course, there's going to be a Q&A session at the end. But like I said, if you do have questions in the meantime, feel free to ask them in the chat, in the Q&A section, and we're going to try to answer them as much as we can. If not, if we need some more details or something, you're going to always have the option to write to webinars@zoomcharts.com. All right. Without further ado, I think I can give the floor to you, Federico.
Okay, sure. Let me let me switch up my other application, or let me share that. I hopefully will do okay this time. Yeah. Okay, can you guys see my report?
Yep.
Yes. No? Okay, I'm gonna be looking that side because actually the report in there is on this side of my screen. But before we go there, I would like you guys to make sure you check the fact table. And I want you to have a closer look at this particular column: quantity, sales, discount, and profit. These are the original tables. I was not happy with the profit. I tried to make as much calculation as possible, and the profit didn't match, not with discount, not without discount. Okay, so I actually did a calculation and recalculated profit. Just a tip, go check it out. Don't be happy with what the information is giving you. Okay, check it out. If you find in the discrepancy or you are not happy about it, work it out and produce something that makes sense to you. There is no right or wrong. We have given you a data set, so you provide me with a profit that is in the first column. Okay, Okay, but I would like you to actually work it out a little bit. Color, we speak a lot about color palette. We speak a lot about design. And still, we are producing reports with terrible color choices. Okay, I'm sorry guys, don't take it personally. I did plenty of color errors, and I want you to think about the report and what kind of palette, okay, we can put in a report. And when I say what kind of palette or color palette, it's not just one. A visual might need one of the palette that we have in the screen. So it's an amalgamation of palette. Actually, what will you use nicely and properly in your report? There are 5 that people know about color palette. We have categorical, if object, or if department, if region, okay, have a different color. Okay, and be careful. If you have 20 countries, you're not going to put everywhere in a different color because you're going to find that you have too many colors. Okay, so think about that you have 20 countries in this case, okay, and you have 5 from Europe, 5 from the US. Sorry, no, the US is a country. Cities, okay, different cities or countries around the world, and they belong to a continent. So you decide to group that and give that country that within the same continent the same color. So Italy, France, Latvia, Spain, we have blue. Okay, Mexico, and so on, we have the other color. Don't try to use too many colors neither. Okay, you have monochromatic, is the one that I normally use for most visuals. And we go from light to dark, from dark to light. It's up to you. I normally like to make the maximum of the best column, the darker color, and I go then to light. We have diverging, we have one color in the middle, and I want you to refer to this map when you have a legend with color. Okay, you have the map, you have different colors, and you have this little legend that tell you from the right, this from orange to dark orange, and then a middle point that is gray, and then go with another color from dark to light. Okay, so there is a middle color, and then it diverges from one place to another place. Okay, highlight, that is very simple. You are highlighting the most important color in your visual. The most important one, it can be 2. Okay, you have 20, it can be 3. Okay, you tell them, listen, the top 3 products are the best, they are dark blue, and the other are gray. I'm giving attention, I'm calling attention to these top 3. And then we have what we call the warning color, the indicator color. Yellow is neutral in the middle, green is good, red is bad. Okay, so you have a visual and you say, listen, that is my maximum, that is my minimum, and that is my mix point. And I want you now to think about, okay, which one I use, and I want to repeat that. You might use a combination of this palette in a report. If you have a map, you might decide to go for the categorical, grouping in 4 to 6 different colors. Don't use more than that. Okay, if you have a column chart and you want to tell them from top to bottom the same color, you use the monochromatic. If you have, again, think about you have another map for the diverging, okay, and you want to highlight, okay, let's say the left side, this side is the less population, and this side the more population. You start by a middle point, that is the average, that is the middle point. This color on the right are the country with more population, and the other country on the left are the country with less population. And within these two groups, they also change color. But there is a middle zone, and it goes from strong to light. Highlight doesn't have explanation. Se puede usar categoría secuencial y highlight en un mismo reporte. En un mismo reporte, yes. In the same report, yes. In the same visual, no. It's gonna be a mess up. Okay, so I try to explain, Angel. In one report, you can have all this color palette. Okay, it's not just one color palette per report. It's more about that's a visual what I am representing, how I can represent better with the use of color. Color in data visualization is not about looking cool. It's providing meaning. Okay, the idea when you look at that map and you see 4 different sections with different colors, just 4, you say, okay, this with the red color are a student that 13 years of general education, the blue have 12, the green have 15, and the other group have 9. So you're giving some meaning to the color. And you are not selecting all the countries at the same time with different colors. Run away, guys, run away for all the fancy stuff you see on LinkedIn. Okay, they are quite good developers out there, but we are not there yet. Okay, we are learning. Okay, I'm gonna be easy on the use of the color palette. I'm gonna take and I'm gonna learn. Okay, that we have these 5 different color palette categories: categorical, sequential, diverging, highlight, and alert. Actually, if you work with Tableau, they can include it with Tableau. So you can actually pick up for the visual, okay, what kind of palette you want to use. This does not happen in Power BI at the moment, but I'm going to show you that it happens. Can you see? If you look at this as a whole, now I think I'm going to do it better.
We actually don't see the additional window, Federico, since it's a new window.
All right. What about if I do it in a chart? Like that.
In the chart, probably, yeah.
Can you see it?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Look at that. That is the color palette that Power BI brings. If you look at here at the top, that is kind of categorical. Okay. It gives you a range of colors. And from here to the bottom, let's choose that, it gives you the monochromatic. And then you choosing and picking, you can create the diverging, pick at the middle, I'm gonna pick up this color and this color, okay, right or left. You got the highlight because you got the gray and different primary colors, and you have the alert because you have them there too. So actually what Power BI has done, in my view, I'm not 100% sure about that, but in my interpretation, it gives you this categorical color palette at the top, and from there you can create your sequential, diverging, highlight, and alert. Okay, I'm gonna take a print out of this screen, print out a PDF of that screen, and please ask me for it in LinkedIn, and I will pass it to you so you have as a for you to remember. But you can find this anywhere in the internet or LinkedIn. Actually, I'm looking for a book called The Big Picture by Steve Wedler. It can there. Nothing special. You just need to remember then and what is what for. Okay, is Hani having some problem with the video? In the comment?
Yeah, it's okay. I'll handle it.
Okay, guys. So remember, I'm gonna print this out in a PDF. If you wanna guys ask for it, send me a message and I will pass it to you. And One more thing about color, don't get crazy. Run away. If you are learning, you are a beginner like me. Let's go with a white background, guys, and a nice contrast on the visual. Don't try to go all crazy with dark light report, okay, with a lot of colors. And another thing is your audience, okay? We are using LinkedIn mainly on Western platform. There is a lot of people from everywhere, but a lot of people interact. They come from the finance blue color panel background. Okay, don't go orange and green. Okay, because you're coming from a very colorful country, because it's gonna break. Okay, it's gonna break what they see in it. Okay, go easy. Remember this color palette. Use it per visual. Okay, don't go crazy. You don't need to use the 5 in every report. You can use 2, 3. In some occasions, you might need to use the 5. Okay, but it's a combination of this color palette who actually will make your report more visual, better, and the color will have a meaning. Okay, filters. That is the second problem. Every time I come to a webinar with AV, I break all the report. And I find out why, because I was working on this. Okay, and if you look at the graphic, all of them are by month or year. Year, month, 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 month. What happened? When I click here, that became only one data point, and all of them. When I click here, all of these become one data point, and so on. So the amount of trying and editing interaction is very, very important. So if I click here now, nothing is gonna break. There is, give me some, so in December, USA was X, but it's not breaking nothing else. And it's interacting with the visual I want to. I only want you to interact with this one. This one is not going to interact with, because they are fixed measures, they are calculated for the year 2023. That is not going to change. Okay? But this is going to change. If I go here and click there, it's not going to break anything, because again, I have to play with edit interaction. If you look at my edit interaction, you see, don't touch this one, don't touch this one, don't touch this one, don't touch this, don't touch, don't touch, don't touch, and don't touch. I don't want you to affect the filters. To be able to do that, I have to go filter by filter. Playing, switching off, switching off, switching off, switching off, switching off. So there is no any breaking. It break a little bit here, but no, it still give me the year, September, by giving me some information about the month, the year in the month of September. I can't remember which one I pressed, this one. I did not have time, I did not have time to put a clear filter button.
Don't worry about it, man.
So wherever you click, guys, yesterday, now, oh yeah. Okay, so whatever filter you use in here will not break the report. No matter how many, I think, I haven't tried with all, but I don't think you will be able to break it. Guys, believe me, you have a lot of work to do. You have to, let me clean. And also, I don't know if you realize, but there is a little filter selected, so I know what filters are there Selected, you need to be careful because for 2, 3 filters is okay. Otherwise, the measure is very heavy in performance. So 2 or 3 will be okay. More than that, no. But let me try to go something that we can see. This filter is a field parameter that is only affecting this visual. So I don't have to worry about it. And if I click here, nothing happened. It's telling me, okay, you click me, but everything is visible there. There is that column that I am highlighting, but the report is still active. And you achieve that. So I didn't want this to affect what? I didn't this to affect this. Why not? Because that is referring to 2023. They are calculating measure for the year 2023. Last year is 2022. So I don't want 21 to affect that because it will make no sense. I think here I didn't intend to affect this one because this market and this market. Okay. Let me take it and see what happened. You see, it disappears. Okay, so the interaction. And that is there again. Guys, that is the only way to make sure that your filter doesn't break your report. Okay, you have to go filter by filter. I played with this one, I did that. Let me show you card. I think let's hire the card because sometimes I could not reach this one. So I hired this to be able to reach this one. And vice versa. Hide, show, click, 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 show again, verify, and put back. Okay? And I spent well over 2 hours going filter by filter. Okay, making sure that the report cannot be broken. Angel, that one here, if you see the report, it goes the month, the month, and the year below. And then I have the field parameter filter measures. Okay, it's in that, and I think is yes, I got it at the second. I got at the second level, no, the third level, that one. Okay, Angel. One more thing that I wanted very quickly is that we have one type of filter, okay, that is the slicers. We have the filter pane. If you look at here, I'm using this filter just to give me Mexico. We have visual filtering when I do that. Who is gonna do that filtering? Okay, better. I'm filtering by the visual, as you can see. And there is another filter. So we have visual filtering, slicer, the filter pane, and that. That can be used as a filter. 4 types of filters: slicers, filter pane, filter visuals, and DAX filters. Okay, a combination of them work to perfection. If you only have 1 year, you don't need to put here only 1 year 23. You will put it there on the filter page. You say only for 23, I don't have anymore. Or I don't want anymore, I want this page to be 23. So a static filter are normally in the filter page. Slicers and visual filtering, a combination of them, okay, will help you a lot, okay, in filtering information. Don't go crazy and put 20 filters. Remember, if you have a visual by month, and then you put here a month slicer, as soon as you click on the slicer, it's gonna break it. Okay? Because every time you click in a month, the same way happening here, but it will be only one, okay, data point. So remember, if I'm working a monthly level, I don't want a filter by month. Because every time you pick, okay, every time you pick a month, it's gonna be one data point per visual that is by month.
Yeah. And one more thing, guys, like it might seem like, we're kind of being picky and this requires too much time to go through all the filters. Yeah, we get it. We had the same feeling when we started out building the reports. But the more you work with the reports, the more you understand that any possibility that you give to the user to break the report, they will find it. Trust me, you can try to hide it. I don't know what superpower they have, but they will find a way on how they can break it. Once they break it, their impression of you and your capabilities is like, I couldn't even properly make the report. Even though there's just one single case where it breaks, that's the impression that it kind of leaves, right? So even though it's annoying, we get it. There's a reason why we tell you this every single time we talk to you. Go play around with the slicers, go play around with the visuals, make sure you're not breaking the report because it affects how people perceive your report. That's that first impression that they get from it, right? So make sure you just play around with them, spend a little bit extra time, play around with different configuration setups and everything. And the other thing that I also, when Federico is showcasing you that he's, for example, defining whether the visual is affecting one visual or not, make sure that you also pay attention to the way on how it's interacting with the visual. The one thing you have to always kind of double check and make sure that you're using either a single one or you're purposely using one or the other interaction is there are a few different ways. Like I said, for Zoom charts, we are using two different visual versions. You can see we have the one with the red icon, the one with the blue icon. Those are pin and filter visuals, so they have different interactions. If you're using a native visual under format and edit interactions, you can see that you have these options. So there are just two different ways of how you can handle it. But the reason why they're being separated is because this is the behavior that you essentially get from every single one of them. If you're using filtering as your main capability, if I choose consumers, you can see it filtered out the data that's relevant only to this particular selection, right? So it didn't highlight the part that's important, but it filtered out exactly the numbers and the rows of data that are relevant. If I do the same thing on a visual that passes out the highlighting capability, you can see this is the difference. So instead of showcasing only the data that's available, it's showcasing me how much of the total does this particular selection contribute to. Both of these both of these scenarios have their own advantages. One of the things about filtering is because it allows you to focus and make sure that you're seeing only the relevant information, right? But in some cases, you also want to see how much from the total you're contributing to. So that's all good. Highlighting is also capable of doing that, and it's a great approach. But the tricky part with highlighting is, for example, if I create another visual, which is also going to be using highlighting, and I'm going to say that I actually want to use a particular country based on, again, sales. I have a lot of them. I'm going to also just make sure that showcase the top 10 based on total sales, for example. So if I now have consumers selected and I choose United Kingdom, you can see that essentially all of this becomes obsolete. I just have a small little gap there. Now imagine if you're also combining things that are coming from a data perspective, meaning that I only want to showcase, for example, the month of January. So the highlight in some cases can become very, very small. And at that point, it just seems that the visual is either not properly loading or it's not showcasing anything. So be cautious about how you set up these interactions. The one thing that I can definitely tell you is be very careful when you mix and match them, because you can mix different interactions in a single report page, but be very cautious about how you do it, because it's going to be confusing for the user. If they click on one visual, one thing happens. If they click on the other visual, the same action, completely different result, right? So you have to find the common ground on how the user wants to navigate through the report and what he achieves through it. So that's one of the things that I also wanted to emphasize regarding the edit interactions. It might seem that there's not a lot of things here, but trust me, a lot of interesting effects are achieved through adjustments of different interactions.
Not only that, also it's important if you are clicking on consumer, everything that is moved in the
Yeah.
visual is about the consumer now. It's not anymore about the other stuff. Now everything you see, any number that you see belong to the consumer group.
Yeah.
So you need to understand that, okay, I click consumer, so everything change around me, all that change now belong to the consumer group. Okay, so remember that. I think they call it in somehow the content field, the filter context. Okay,
Yeah.
that's how important it is. Okay, for you to understand when you decide to click a filter or a visual or whatever.
So yeah, that's just one thing I wanted to emphasize on as well. Regarding some of the visuals that I would recommend to use for this particular data set, to kind of help you out, guys, what we also did is, and I'm going to post a link in the webinar jam, we actually made a quick LinkedIn post as well to kind of highlight the top 5 visuals we think are going to be beneficial. So if I showcase it to you quickly, going to drag it onto this screen and change this share. Hopefully it's going to showcase now.
The screen went off.
Yep,
But
now it should be. So yeah, we made also a quick LinkedIn post just to kind of emphasize on some of the visuals that you could be focusing on, just telling a couple of things with that you can also pay attention to. So that's one of the things. If we go back to the report, so let me switch the screen again. All right. And now let me know when you can again see the report. I just want to make sure that everybody sees that. But yeah, maybe, I don't know, Sabina or Leona, if you could just verify that you can see the screen.
yep, everything's okay on my
Yep.
side.
Okay. So what I did here is essentially the 3 visuals that I'm using. You can see it. Okay, perfect. So there are multiple ways on how you can essentially think about building your report. You could theoretically try to add multiple values, multiple series in a single visual, try to compare them. But the drawback for that is you don't want to make a visual that's just too much, right? As much as we all have been there, trust me, I've built reports also where I have a single visual which showcases 5, 6 different metrics, but when you look at the whole picture, it's just like, just a bit too much for the user, right? Because they have to understand, okay, what color represents what, how is this interfere? Is this on the primary axis? Is this on the secondary axis? What does the color represent? There's a lot of questions that you have to ask. So there are different ways on how you can handle this. One of them is what already Federico is using in his report as well. So it's exactly the same field parameter. This is just a different slicer setup. So in Federico's case, you can go ahead, slicer settings, and use a tile, and just tile shows you which one is available, which one is selected, and what are options you have available. In my case, I just opted in for the dropdown, and I added a text that show by and based on something, right? Different ways, different setups. Again, remember, you have a lot of options on how you can make the report feel like it's your own. So in this case, if I switch between different metrics, it's the same approach as had Federico said. You can choose what affects what value in the visuals. In Federico's case, it was one single visual. In my case, I just went with all visuals simultaneously. The difference, or the reason why I did this, is because I want that essentially the field parameter to be the driver for the information that you're investigating in depth. Those are 2 different approaches. Both of them are fine, and that's one of the things you kind of have to figure out, which one do you want to go for, because you can't really have both of them. Then it's going to be very tricky. But yeah, this is one of them. The other thing that I did here is essentially you can see here there's total profit that I can see from the timeline how things are going to be looking. I have a table, I have a map visual, I have categories. So the primary goal for a quick, easy setup, sure, I agree with you guys. It's not visually super appealing, right? That's not the main idea. I'm just showcasing visuals. But if I wanted to, I can easily click, for example, okay, I want to focus on Europe. I want to focus on Western Europe. I could do the same things through the map, but the one thing you have to understand whenever you're representing information is what is going to be more convenient to the users, right? Is it the fact that they can read its country name in a bar chart or a table or a column chart, or if they navigate through the map itself? If they zoom in, of course, they can see things in more detail. So they have different options in how they can navigate. If they want to select one or two different years, I can quickly create a selection. I can click on that selection to drill down into the next layer. So basically next time unit, or I can switch from the time units. So this is a different way on how you can kind of play around with it. You're trying to make a report that instead of showcasing sort of a particular snapshot is a lot more sensitive in a way, I would say, because every single movement is going to affect something that you're seeing on the screen, but it's a different way on how you can perceive information. And the tricky part about this is, or the one thing that I would definitely kind of force you to do if I could, is make sure you ask the customer and you showcase them what is possible. Because 99% of the time, they don't know what they want. They want a report, right? Which is great, but the report has to include what? What visuals, what sort of navigation, what sort of interaction options. So you kind of have to showcase them what's the benefit of this, what's the benefit of that, and let them choose and tell you what exactly they're after for. And one thing, I think Federico is going to agree with me on this one. If you guys manage to make a report and it doesn't require a single change, that's a masterpiece, and I don't believe you. It hasn't happened to me even a single time. There's always going to be changes. Doesn't matter how specific the request was. Somebody is going to be like, we were thinking, and so just make sure you showcase them the options, be open to suggestions, listen to them, because they're going to be consuming the report. It's not going to be you who's going to be essentially consuming this, but it's going to be the end user. They need to be satisfied with the report. They need to think this is intuitive and easy to use. Just because you build it and you know how to use it doesn't mean that they will know how to use this. So take those things into consideration. But yeah, so this is one of the approaches, right, where I'm just focusing on a single metric. I could also go for a different approach. And I actually purposely left the yellow color here. So because yellow color is one of those colors which you also noticed in Federico's color palette principle. Yellow color is one of the attention colors because we're all used to the traffic light. Green, yellow, red, right? 3 states, whether it's good, it's okay. It's not too good, too bad, but we should pay attention to it. And we have also the red, which is, we're not doing that great. So the colors are meant to be representing something. So whenever you have them in your visual, if it's something associated with, let's say, the color palette or the branding of the company that you're building the reports for, sure, this might be useful and it might work for that scenario. In other cases, I would just probably recommend that you have the option of choosing any color in the world. Just choose something that allows you to make sure you know the difference, but it doesn't really stand out too much, right? It still showcases you the information, but it's not dragging or kind of screaming at you. And what I was trying to do with the timeline visual here is I wanted to have 3 main metrics. I wanted to have the sales, the current year sales, the sales for last year, and I wanted to know the difference. And for the difference, and I'm of course using conditional formatting. The reason why I wanted to have the conditional formatting is because what it allows me to do is, for example, I can switch to a monthly view. I can then say that, hey, I want to focus on the continent of Africa. And you can see conditional formatting allows me to quickly see which months were in the good or basically in the green or in the red. I'm also utilizing a principle of stacking you basing on 0. So every single column is starting from the 0 point. And the way on how these are being treated is that the blue column that's sitting in the front is actually the total sales, which is the current. and the reference from the previous year is in the background. I could, of course, just play around and say that, hey, the blue columns are just a bit too big and I can barely see the gray area. Sure, adjust the width percentage of the column that you're using there. For example, 50%, you can see the gray a little bit more clear. It all depends on how you want to showcase this to your users. You could also, for example, if you're not using zero-based stack, make sure you think about where the stack is always starting from. Because, for example, one of the things that we also do have an option of is separating positive and negative values, which in this case isn't going to do anything because I'm starting everything from a zero. But if you have positive and negative values in a single column going upwards, for example, let's say profit, right? And the profit might be that in the single month where one product is in the green and the other half is in the red. So separate negative numbers would allow you to, even though not summarize everything together, but distinguishably separate the two values. One is going up, one is going down. And then you have another value which shows you the absolute value. So that sort of stuff is something you have to consider and think about. But yeah, the timeline visual allows you to have conditional formatting. It allows you to play around with the width of the colors. So for example, for the conditional coloring, what I opted in for is to use a solid edge color, meaning that I want to highlight the whole column and I want to have the lower and upper values. And instead of defining it based on some sort of a metric or something, it's quite simple. As soon as it's above a zero, that's the definition point. Right? I define the value that I must surpass in order to go into the green. You can also play around with different additional properties. Like, for example, if I hover over the series, you can see that right here, the difference is in red. If I hover over here, the difference is in green. So it also represents the state of it. If you don't want this to be in sort of a thing, you just want to have a single color for everything, you can disable dynamic color in tooltips. And now if I hover over it, well, it's based on the original color. So I'm going to say that this is going to be the gray color. Yeah. Just to make sure that it's always going to be the same one. For the difference also, you can adjust the colors and that's going to be just fine. So playing around with these is what allows you to essentially create unique combinations and showcase different results. Make sure you play around with the measures as well. Like, for example, I did a quick thing right here for the difference, right? So initially, the difference was just basically this. Current year sales versus the sales for last year. That's how I calculated the difference. But what happens is you might also have a year where you don't have a reference point from the previous one. So you want to make sure that in your measures, for example, I'm actually going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see. So what I also am doing here is making sure that I first check that, hey, if there is no option or there's no value for the previous year value, just return a blank, right? Don't tell me that this is a zero. It's not a zero because there's nothing to compare against. Make sure that these values and numbers make sense. Because always one thing that I can definitely emphasize on in data analytics, understand the difference between a zero and a null and a blank. Those are three completely separate things. They all seem similar, but they're very different.
No, zero is no sale. And a blank, we don't know what happened. If they didn't input the information, there was a roll on the information. Or
Yeah.
If no, it's a zero.
And that's why you have to understand it, because sometimes you need to have those null numbers. Sometimes you want to replace, if you don't have a value, you actually want to tell that there's going to be a zero there. So you have to understand what's happening behind it in order to also define the measures and things. But yeah, so for example, timeline is one of the visuals that you can utilize. What I'm doing here is the combo bar visual. Same principle, but instead of opting in for conditional colors, because I can do that as well, you can see that if I go into Africa, it just goes both ways. It's kind of bringing my attention, but it's not telling that, this is a bad area. I just want to showcase that I have a minus here. That's fine. So, but if you want, of course, go into the formatting options, series defaults, conditional formatting, and I could also have this one. It all depends on how you're showcasing and defining the things that you want to see as a user and what you want them to see. So pay attention to these sort of details. For the map visual, if I go back, for example, you can see that in this one, I'm using a clustering principle. and I'm having the values in the middle. In this case, I opted in for, I don't really need the pie chart around it. I just want to focus on the general number. But the other thing that I did here, and this is something I've seen a lot of map visuals, sort of one of the most common things that people miss, is this right here. So if I go ahead and find, there's actually going to be inside labels. By default, the background color for the label is going to be 0, meaning that there is no background physically placed on the label. So it's fully transparent. And if you look at it at first glance, it seems like it doesn't look too bad, right? Actually, let's make it on a bigger screen. It's going to be a little bit easier. So you can see, for example, yeah, okay, these numbers seem okay, right? But if you look at these numbers right here, first of all, I can barely see them, right? So I could play around with the sizing. And the other thing is, if you actually zoom in into that region, or just, get closer to the screen, which is what I'm doing, I'm just old. And I can see that there's minus 27. The 2 is actually even outside of the node itself, which is not even visible to me. And because of the way on how the map is being drawn, white on white, it just disappears. So what I can do is say that the background opacity is going to be 100, meaning that there is going to be a background for the value. So if you look at it now, you can definitely see the whole number. Again, a very small little detail, but these details is what makes the difference. These sort of things. And then, of course, also for the scatter plot, just make sure that you have some sort of a logic behind it. Right? You could, of course, drag in different things, but the thing about the scatter plot is, even though it has numerical values on both axes, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can have anything out there and it makes sense. Right? Make sure that the two values that you're correlating or trying to understand the correlation between have some common connection between them. Does it make sense to sort of analyze one against the other? So that's one of the things. And the other thing is, make sure you also create some sort of a drill down approach. So you're not starting with hundreds of nodes, but you allow the user to go down into the details. So in this case, I'm choosing a specific segment from the customers. I can zoom in and say, hey, I want to look at the makeup. And this is how the makeup looks, right? I have all individual points I can look into. I can select, for example, just a couple of them and say that, okay, everything that's in the green, essentially green, because we're above the 0 line. So this is how it looks for this segment of the products. If you can't really make sure that you select the right ones, remember you can always zoom in closer, make sure see what the name of the product is and so forth. So you're giving these options to the user. If you think that these colors, they don't mean anything or they're not representable, it's just a chaos, again, go into the data points, for example, coloring mode, say that it's going to be fixed, and again, tell that there's going to be just a single color. Every single little detail matters. Because one of the things that you also have to consider is, as much as it's sort of kept on the second layer, especially when you're learning, is how are all the things that I'm doing going to affect the performance of the report? Because this is also what Federico mentioned, right? When you saw he had those dynamic filtering showing up, he clearly mentioned that, hey, using 2, 3 is fine. Going upwards of 3 might start to create some issues. If you have a very powerful PC, probably not going to be an issue, right? But remember, not everybody's going to have the latest MacBook, right? So just take those things in consideration, especially if you're working with governmental agencies. Those just tend to have a little bit older machines. So take all those things into consideration when you're building the reports. Try out some of the visuals. If you get stuck on something, let us know, reach out to us. And yeah, I think that's the main thing I wanted to cover from my side. And I think we do have a couple of questions, right?
Do we?
I didn't know. Ayobi asked, what kind of software are you guys using? Excel? Excel is the data source, but the software you're using is Power BI, Microsoft Power BI.
Yes. Ángel Lucero Sales RY es venta año anterior. Okay.
Sure.
Last year, man. Año anterior.
Ah, okay.
Last year, año anterior. It's not complicated.
It is if you don't know any of those words.
Well, when was it? The other day I was in the webinar, and no, I don't know.
Lee, yeah.
Liang, and blah, blah, they were talking Latvian.
Yeah.
And okay, thank you, bye. No idea. Could you suggest any educational resources for beginners to learn Power BI? To learn Power BI, if you mean you to start with, it will be unfair for me to give you one specific. Okay, I will go and check what you have in YouTube. I will check Maven Analytics, Udemy, Coursera, and the typical. And then
Yep.
when you have how to use Power BI a little bit, then you can and see A/B recordings about ZoomCharts. There are plenty, okay, of YouTube channels. Data Camp, Angel, great. There is tons.
Yeah.
I personally will go for Maven Analytics. That is where I grew up. But I have done plenty of private courses and Udemy courses. So
Yeah.
there are tons.
And also, funny enough, because usually official resources are not the greatest one. Microsoft's MS Learn platform for Power BI, those modules and courses, they're not that bad. So you can also use those. Just make sure that you learn something that is important to you. When you're starting off, you don't need to know how to administer Power BI. Make sure you're learning the basics first, then just randomly going through courses.
And if you go to university in Latvia, AB might actually give you some classes there.
Yes. So worst case scenario, you can all come to Latvia and I'll give you a course.
University.
But yeah, there's a bunch of different resources. When you're looking at, like Federico said, Maven Analytics, for example, if you're looking at YouTube, what I would definitely suggest is don't stop on the first one. Take a look at few videos and see which one you like better. Because every single one of the content creators is going to have a different way of presenting things. So you must have some interest, and you sort of have to like the person that's going to be in front of you, because teaching data analytics and Power BI is not a fun thing to do by default. You have to make it fun. But in order to do that, the other person has to be somewhat relatable to you, right?
Okay, there are a number of questions, but I don't know if you actually replied to them, but we are very short of time. How did you connect e-commerce data to Power BI? When you are, don't close that, show the Excel workbook. Yes, click
Yeah.
on the Excel workbook.
Yeah, let me just share the full screen, because otherwise they're not going to see anything.
It's gone, this question is from Abdullah. You go there, okay?
Excel workbook, you
It will
find the
take
Excel
you
file.
it will take you to your file in your computer, and you just load it. Okay, that is not the best way, but it's one way. Okay.
Yeah. And then, of course, you choose the actual data source, whether you're taking the table, whether you're taking the worksheet. Then you can go into the Power Query to adjust if any modifications have to be done and so forth. But that's one of the paths.
Sapana, can you show the column chart working? We are very short of time, but we have fantastic videos about how that chart works in the ZoomChart page, if I am not wrong.
Yep.
So
we do have
it's a tutorial. I think you will take more than Abe is now trying to explain everything very quickly to you.
Yeah. And I just posted a link as well. That's the Academy, which is a completely free resource. If you want to learn something about our visuals, you can go through the video guided source there.
And that's for you. If there is a way to dynamically highlight or add a specific data points based on the current Zoom level? Oh, okay. Here's referring. Can you highlight max and minimum in your visuals automatically?
Min max points based on the Zoom level. Yeah, the conditional formatting actually allows you, if you go for one of them, or actually let's go here, for example. If you go under conditional formatting, you can also do that based on this series, and you can choose, for example, the maximum or the minimum option, and then highlight it that way.
Correct. So that's it. I think then with a Sapana say practical implantation, DIY sales. I'm not sure what you mean by that. So, Pana, but we are short of time. Send me a message and I'm happy to reply to you back. Avil 1-3, Sabine is gonna keep us for 3 minutes.
No, we gotta finish it. Yeah. Last thing, don't forget, guys, that there's the feedback that I told you about in the beginning. If you finish it, you also have the option of participating in the giveaway to get a book from Pact. And all of those books are related to data analytics, not just Power BI, but also different other
You
aspects.
got Tableau, you got
Yeah,
data modeling, you got Cookbook, you got Power BI and Python, you have a great collection, data modeling, you got a great collection of books to pick from. So please complete the form, okay? And you might be a lucky winner.
absolutely. And if you have any other questions, like I said, make sure you reach out to us, webinars@zoomcharts.com, or you can just message me or Federico, or you can post an FP20 Analytics LinkedIn page, or also reach out to ZoomCharts page. There's ways. Use one of them.
Fantastic.
All right, guys. Thank
Guys,
you so
thank
much
you.
for your time.
Thank you very much. That's my third meeting today. I cannot speak anymore. I'm not kidding.
All right,
So
guys.
I see you soon.
Yep.
Go for it, guys.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.